Hi guys, our today topic is HSRP, Hot Standby Routing Protocol. Here is some definition of HSRP, how it works, what it is. The first point is HSRP, or we can say it Hot Standby Routing Protocol. It is first hope redundancy protocol, which provide redundancy at gateway level. Gateway means for the local subnet, there is a gateway configured, and the gateway always will be a L3 device, or it can be a router, it can be a switch. So that level it provides redundancy for the local subnet. It works on active standby model. Active standby means suppose we have two routers configured in HSRP, only one router can be active, which process the traffic, and the other routers will be standby, and they just monitor the active router in case failed. In this, only one device active at a time, another in standby and no process the traffic. Okay. And the next point is HSRP allows you to configure two or more routers as standby, and only one router can active at any time. It means if we configured more than two routers in a group of HSRP, in that group there is only one router can be active at a time. Other routers will be in standby state. They will not process the traffic which is coming from the host machine or user, and it's going through the L3 device which is having the HSRP configured. It can be a router, it can be a switch, L3 switch, whatever. Active router always responsible to forward the traffic. It means always active router process traffic and it passes through that router. Other routers will not responsible for the to process the traffic until unless the active router get failed. Here is the key points about HSRP. The first is HSRP is a Cisco proprietary protocol. HSRP is a Cisco proprietary protocol and it can be configured only on the Cisco devices, Cisco router, Cisco switches, and with HSRP, two or more devices support a virtual router with fictitious MAC address and unique IP address. In this HSRP, two or more devices a virtual router. Suppose we have a two routers, we have configured HSRP on both routers as a group or as a in a single group. So there is a uh, three IPs we need to configure HSRP for the two devices. If we have a two routers and there is two interfaces, we have to use to configure HSRP, and for that we need three IPs. One for the one router for the physical interface, one IP for the physical interface or on both routers, and one IP will be a virtual IP. The local subnet, which is directly connected to these the router, and they will always know the virtual IP as a gateway, and the physical IPs they don't know. So w- active router always take responsibility of that virtual IP address. And if in case the active router get failed, then the virtual router automatically shift to the standby router, and standby router will be active once the active router get failed. The second point is host uses this IP as default gateway and the MAC address for the layer 2 header. The virtual router MAC address is 0000 and 0C07 and ACXX. It is in a hexadecimal format. Okay, and the last two hexadecimal bits are XX, which is HSRP group. multiple groups or virtual routers are allowed. We can configure more than one group, multiple group on a single router, and the multiple virtual routers on a single L3 device. It can be a router, it can be a switch. The active router forward the traffic. I already told you. The standby router is backup and monitors periodic hellos. Active router always process the traffic which is coming from the local subnet or the host machines to the router. But the standby router monitors the active router, and they exchange their hello packets, hello messages to the active to standby and standby to active to monitor the active router, or we can say it detect the failure of the active router. Periodic hello send over the multicast address. It is the multicast address because the HSRP configured on the more than one L3 device or L3 or the routers, and that group uh, receive hello packets, hello message from the each other, from the standby to active, and the multicast address is 224.0.0.2. On this multicast address, they send their hello messages to the active router on the in the group, and it send hello messages on the UDP port 1985. The active router is chosen, it has the highest HSRP priority. When we configure the HSRP on the router, we define the priority, and the highest priority always prefer to in the election process of the active router. The default priority is 100. If we have not set any priority on the while configure the HSRP, then it will take the default priority which is 100. And in case tie, the router with highest configured IP address wins the election. If we set the default priority on the router in while configuring the HSRP, then the highest configured IP address on the physical interface wins the election. The new router with the higher priority does not cause an election unless it is configured to preempt. I'll explain you what is preempt in my next lecture. These are the HSRP states, how they start electing the active or standby. These are the steps I'm going to explain here. The initial state. In initial state, there is the HSRP not running in this state. It means there is no configuration of HSRP on the router. The second state is learn. The router does not know the virtual IP address, and it is waiting to hear from the active router. In the learning state, the router is sitting idle, and uh, it's don't know what is the virtual IP of the HSRP group. It is just waiting to uh, hear from the active router what is the virtual IP of the HSRP group configured on the router. And the third state is listen. The router knows the IP, what is the virtual IP, and the MAC address of the virtual router. Virtual router means the active router which have the virtual IP and the uh, virtual MAC address, or we can say fictitious MAC address. And I have already explained you in my previous slide, but it is not that active or standby router. In this state, the router not active or standby. They just knows the IP address and the MAC address of the virtual router. That's it. Speak. In this state, router sends periodic HSRP hello and participate in the election of the active router. In this state, router send periodic hellos on the multicast address, which is I have already explained you in my last slide, and it start election the process. It's participate in the process of to electing the active router or standby router. And the next state is standby. Router monitors hellos from active router and assumes responsibility if active router fails. What standby router? Standby router is just sitting idle and sending hello messages to the active router on the multicast address, and it just monitor the state of the active router. If the active router get failed, then it takes the responsibility to process the traffic which is coming from the host machine or direct connect subnet on the router. And it is high, it's provide the high availability to the end users or end machines connected to the router. The last state is active. Router forwards packet on behalf of the virtual router. The virtual router means the virtual IP address which is we configured while configuring the HSRP on the router, and that IP is movable. We can say if when the uh, the active router always process the traffic on behalf of the virtual IP or virtual router, because we have set the IP address on the physical interfaces of the both router, and one virtual IP is a one IP is a virtual IP, and it send traffic. The the local machine send the traffic to the default gateway, and in this case default gateway is a virtual router, and the virtual router is a active router. Virtual router send packet to the active router, and active router process the traffic and send it outside to the network. Important terms in HSRP. Here is the terms we should know uh, for the HSRP configuration or the concepts. What is virtual IP? Virtual IP. It is default gateway for the local subnet for all local hosts in the network. I already explained you about virtual IP, but here I am again explaining you. Virtual IP is not configured on the physical interface. It is the virtual gateway to the local host machines, and the local host machine only knows the virtual IP. Virtual IP, uh, virtual IP virtual IP process the traffic on the active router. Once the active router get failed, the IP will be shift to the standby. What was the standby router? It shift to the that IP to the router, and that router becomes the active, because a standby router always sending the hello packets on each 3 seconds. 3 seconds the default timer for to sending the hello messages. And once the if it's found the failure of the active router, then it takes the responsibility and becomes the active router. Then virtual IP is the part of active router. Virtual MAC address. Virtual MAC address is auto-generated while configuring the HSRP on Cisco router or Cisco L3 switch. Hello messages. Periodic hello messages exchanged by active and standby router. Default timer is 3 seconds. The next one is hold down timer. This timer tells us about the router that how much time will standby router wait for hello messages if it is not received on time. Okay. Hold time timer is not hello timer. What standby router send hello messages in on each 3 seconds. If it's not getting any response from the active router, then it wait for the 10 seconds to fail over. And if it's after in within 10 seconds, if it's not getting any response from the active router, then it's become active router and it's say, yeah, I am now I am an active router and virtual IP is part of me. And now I will process the traffic and it's assume the active router, which was the active router, it failed. Okay, priority. What is priority? The default priority value is 100. It is helpful when the active router comes back after falling down. Suppose the active router get fail and the standby router becomes active, and after some time, might be how it was a hardware issue or it was something communication between active and standby router. Once the active router, the previously active router becomes active again, then it start negotiating. It starts sending the hello packets to the uh, active router, and it's found in HSRP group, if the previously active router if has a highest priority, then it's become active again, and the active router becomes the current active router will be standby. Then the previously uh, active router becomes active again if it's configured to preempt. Otherwise, if we have not configured preempt, then if the active router get fail and the standby becomes an active again, the active router which was earlier active router and it's become active again, power on again or becomes operational, then it will not be a active router until unless the active router which is currently active router get failed. Okay, preempt. It is a state in which the standby router automatically becomes the active router. Here is the topology, and suppose R2 is a router and R3 is a router to the R local gateway and for the local subnet. And on R2 we have configured 123.123.123.2 IP address on a physical interface. And here, okay, I'll explain you in the next in my next slide. Okay, about the topology and what it works, how it works in the operational. Here is the HSRP configuration. I just put the basic understanding of the HSRP configuration on the router. But in my next lecture, this lecture is only for the theoretical part. For the practical, I will explain you in the next lecture. I'll prepare next lecture and upload it as soon as possible. Yeah. Now I'm explaining you how the HSRP works. Wait a minute. This is the topology. I'm explaining you how the HSRP works. Suppose we have a network here. One, two. Let me change my. Okay. Suppose here is a network 123.123.0/24. Suppose this is the network which is connected to this switch. For the redundancy purpose, and we are configuring HSRP on these routers. These routers is on a gateway to this subnet, and here we have configured HSRP on this router and this router, and these are part of the HSRP group. HSRP group, suppose group number 10. This is the virtual physical IP, and this is the physical IP on the router 3, and this is the virtual IP. Okay, if the traffic, suppose we have a machine here, here is the PC. Okay, and suppose it has a IP address 123.123.123.10. Okay, when and the default gateway for this IP address will be a virtual IP, which is 123.123.123, sorry, 123.254. 254. When the PC trying to communicate to the outside of the net local network, or we can say the for the internet or the other network, it will send to the it will send the traffic to the default gateway, which is 254. 254 is a default gateway for this subnet because it's a virtual IP. Suppose we have configured HSRP, and these this is the virtual IP of the while configure the HSRP. Here, once suppose it's an active router, active, okay, and standby. Okay, whenever the traffic goes to the default gateway, it means the virtual IP is a part of the active router, and the traffic will be goes to the active router. Then the active router send traffic to the outside or to the internet or the different network. Okay, when the traffic is when the active router get failed, suppose the router failed because standby router send the hello packets in every 3 seconds. Okay, hello packet in every 3 seconds, and it's monitor the state of the active router, and active router get failed, and in 3 seconds, if the standby router not getting any reply from the active router, it will wait for the 10 seconds. Here it's called hold down timer. Hold down timer. And by default it's 10 seconds. Okay, if in 10 seconds the active router not came up, then the standby router will be active router. Now active router, not standby, and it might be down, dead, or whatever. Now the virtual IP, which is virtual router IP, now it's a part of the router 3, which is now active router. Okay, when the traffic goes to the default gateway, which is 254, the traffic will be processed by the router 3, which is now active. Okay, and suppose in election process, it has suppose we have configured the 150 priority. priority 150, and the suppose we left it default priority on this router, which is 100. After some time, suppose the active router came up. That this router suppose came up. Suppose this router now came up. Now it's operational. What happened? It has a priority 150. It has a 100. If it's came up, okay, up, but this router will not be active again. Why? Because we have not configured preempt. Okay, preempt. If we have not configured preempt while configuring the HSRP on both router, then this router which was down and it came up as a active router. If we have not configured preempt, then it will not be active again until unless we have not configured preempt while configuring the HSRP. Okay. If we have configured preempt, then this router, if this router came up and it starts sending the hello packet, hey, I am now active. Now I am up. My priority is 150. Your priority is 100. I want to take, I want to take over the traffic. Then it will this uh, this router will be it will goes via the election process, and it will be a standby again. Standby, and it will be a active router because we have configured preempt and it has a highest priority because it has a one priority 150 and it has a priority is 100. That's why it take over the traffic, and again it will be a standby and it will be a active. And one more thing, how suppose the traffic is going to the default gateway, which is 254, and the router not this is the active router. Okay, active and standby. If suppose this link down, router is not down, router is still active on this router also up, both router up, and suppose uh, this link is get failed, but this traffic is goes to the 254, which is virtual IP, and it send traffic to the router. It this IP is part of this router, not switch. Okay, do not confuse. If the link get failed, how the subnet, which is local subnet, how it knows the link is down? Because it always sent to the traffic on the active router, but link is failed on the outside of the interface of the router. Then we can monitor, we can track, we can track the interface while configuring the HSRP. If suppose this link down, then the priority will be decrease. Okay, decrease, and it decrease the priority and its default to the 10. If suppose it's get down, the priority will be decreased by 10. Okay, and it will check the priority 150 here and we have 100 here. So the priority will be down by 10 by default, but we can configure it, we can customize it. to the 50 or whatever 60. If suppose we have set it to 60, then if the link down, then the priority will decrease by 60, so, and then it will be a 90. Okay, priority is 90. Then it will check the priority and it has the highest priority. Then the stemmer router again active because it has a highest priority and configured as a preempt. Okay, once the li- now it will be in this case it will be standby because the link of on the outside interface is down. Once again, if the traffic is if the link is stored again on the standby router, now the link suppose get restored again, that priority will be increased by 60. Okay, then again it will be a 150 ha- 150 and it has a 100. Then this router send the hello message to the standby router. Hey, now I am up and I have a highest priority than you, and I have a preempt configured. Please, I want to take over the traffic from the local subnet, and I will be a active router. Then this router will be again goes to the election process, and it will again the standby router, and this router will be active again. Active. Okay. I think I have covered all the things related to theoretical part. In my next lecture, I will create a topology and I will show you the configuration of the HSRP. Thank you.